the Solo Coach Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the latest episode of the Solo Coach Podcast. It's great to have you here. Thank you for your listen. I'm loving some of the feedback I'm getting at the moment and seeing the listen numbers and subscriber numbers on the various different platforms going up is fantastic and really validates to me the value of the work that I'm doing, and also shows to me that some of this content is useful and is interesting and is engaging. So thank you as always for your listen, and if you do have any feedback, any thoughts, any improvement ideas, please send them my way. I'm always looking for new topics, new guests, and new areas to explore for my podcast, and indeed new platforms. If it isn't currently available on your preferred listening platform, let me know and I can look at making it available, as there are so many. But I've done my best to make it available on the main platforms. So without further ado, what are we talking about today? Today's episode is a tough one. It's a deep and one that's very deep and meaningful and close to my heart. So today I'm going to be sensitively exploring the concept of letting go of the old to make room for the new. So I'm going to be explaining what I mean by that, why it matters, and how to go about doing it. As always, I'll be sharing, weaving in some examples from my own life and some of the methods and models and tools and techniques that have worked for me and could work for you too. I'll be talking in the context of 5 different areas in life in which you can apply the concept of letting go of the old to make room for the new, complete at the end of each one of those areas with an action that, if you choose, and I would encourage you to, go away and take one of those actions for each of those areas today. Now, I want to caveat today's episode by saying that this is a sensitive topic, and I'm not going to be talking, I'm specifically not talking about grieving the loss of a loved one. If you've lost a loved one in your life, or you've been through a heavily traumatic experience, that's not what I'm going to be covering today, and I would recommend seeking professional support. And I'm going to pop a little link at the bottom for BetterHelp. And I've had a fantastic experience in my life with therapy, counselling and therapy, as well as analytical hypnotherapy and coaching, as a means to discuss some of the challenges I've faced at various points in my life. And I would really recommend you doing that with a trained mental health professional, if that's something that you feel is suitable and appropriate for you. But today, to get us started, I'm going to be talking about 5 areas of life in which we can let go of the old to make room for the new. So area number 1 I've called letting go of sadness and regret to make room for love and joy. So often we find ourselves carrying around this lead weight of past mistakes, regrets from the past. And it can be very helpful to pause and reflect on what we're carrying around and ask ourselves the question of, well, how is this serving me? It must be serving me in some way, or else I wouldn't be carrying it. And indeed not serving me. So the story I want to share with you on this is my story of when I dropped out of university. I've mentioned this in other episodes of the podcast. And for a long time, I was carrying around the weight of this regret and this wondering what might have been from when I left university, and specifically the regret of how it made certain family members feel when I made that decision and the way I went about doing it and communicating it. In hindsight, looking back, I was much younger then. I'm a little older and wiser now. If I was going to do that again, I'd perhaps handle it more sensitively and have the conversations in a different way. and perhaps I'd be able to explain myself and my feelings and thoughts and challenges a little bit better with the self-awareness that I now have that I didn't have back then. But as you can probably pick up on, I've come to terms with what happened then. I've come to terms with the decision I've made. I've let go of the regret that I felt for years and years and years after dropping out of university, and the way it made certain loved ones who were sponsoring me, supporting me, encouraging me through university, how it made them feel. And I've forgiven myself, and I've forgiven them as well. So when I was travelling, a very powerful experience, a very powerful activity I did was to write a letter of forgiveness. Firstly to myself. So it was, "Dear David, I forgive you for, and I am sorry for." So forgiving, a letter that was for myself, just outlining the things that I'd done and said in my life that I was carrying around this regret for, and specifically calling them out one by one, and the fact that I now wish to let them go, and I have since let them go. Now, to make it a little more understandable, I also did this activity for two loved ones in my life. I wrote them a letter of forgiveness, talking about some certain events and experiences I've had in life, and what I am sorry for myself, what I'm deeply, genuinely sorry for, and what I forgive them for in those specific events. Now, whether or not I mailed those letters, whether or not I sent those letters to the individuals is largely irrelevant, because the point was, it wasn't about them, it was about me, and about me letting go of the burden and the weight of some of the stories and memories and experiences from the past that I'd been carrying around. And I found that experience really cathartic. Some people choose to print it and burn the letter, like a ceremonial type of burning. Other people choose to never print it and just delete it or email it to themselves. I think caution advised if it's a very sensitive topic, very sensitive material, and you absolutely don't want anyone ever to read it and see it. Just be cautious and careful of where you save it, what platform you're saving it on, and if it might, if there's a risk of it becoming public, or, getting lost if it's on a piece of paper in a communal area, for example. But I really recommend that activity in any way or shape or form you want to do it, digitally or on paper. Sometimes it can be really powerful to write things down on paper, to get your feelings off your chest in a journaling style, but also in the style of a letter with some structure. I found that extremely powerful for me, and that then created space for an even better relationship with those two family members, loved ones, and we're in an absolutely great space now, and we were in a very good space before. But that activity for me just enabled me to release some of what I was feeling, and words that I always wanted to say. And now I know that in my heart of heart, I've said those words, and I did choose to share them with those family members. And we never had any discussion about it. But the point was, I have said my piece, and I have shared what I wish to share. So I no longer hold any regrets, which I might have otherwise held for a very long time. So again, just caveating, this is really sensitive, it's heavy, it's deep, it's emotional, it's messy. If you don't feel comfortable and able to do something like this, if you're not even sure where to start, absolutely discuss it with a coach or a counsellor or a therapist. I haven't just done all of these things on my own, and it hasn't just all happened overnight. It's happened over a period of years, and by reading a lot of self-improvement, self-help books, and putting into action a lot of the advice and guidance that I've read within them. People who write them often refer to them as shelf help, and people who write these style of books say, I hope my book doesn't just sit there on a shelf, and the worst thing is someone to just read my book, add it to the shelf, and then just read countless more self-help books and not actually carrying out any of the actions. You better to. I'm a great believer in that. You're better to read one self-help book and take some of the actions in it than to read 10 self-help books and do none of the actions. So that's number one in letting go of sadness and regret to make room for love and joy. Area number two of your life in which the concept of letting go of the old to make room for the new, for me, has been really powerful, has been the act of letting go of old physical belongings. So letting go of old possessions to make room for new ones. So the question to ask yourself is, how are these old possessions, these old belongings that you carry around with yourself, how are they potentially blocking the flow of the future? What's the story of why you're keeping them? I know people who have kept broken belongings and broken items because they remember that they cost a lot of money and that they want to get them fixed one day, but the cost of getting them fixed will probably be more than the cost that they initially spent on buying the item. But because it was so painful when it got broken, they keep this broken, say, laptop around, and it eats at them every time they see it, and it's frustrating and it's annoying, and it's a constant reminder of, that was the day I dropped that flipping lovely MacBook on the floor, and I'm going to get it fixed one day, and 10 years later it's so old and deprecated and useless old technology that they wouldn't want it anyway. It's useless and all of its residual value has gone, so you've just carried it around like a ball and chain of a reminder of a mistake you made, but like a reminder of that regret and that bad day. And I'm absolutely so guilty of doing this myself, having old items, old possessions, bikes I no longer ride, and toys from my childhood that I no longer play with. And there's an element absolutely of sentimental value and wanting to keep something to look back on for memory's sake, for posterity, for reflecting on the past. Particularly if it's relating to a loved one that's no longer around. And I'm a huge supporter of that. And I wouldn't advocate throwing out something that you really do feel brings you joy and has huge sentimental value. But that said, I would encourage you to look at, if you do have a whole cupboard full or a garage full or a bedroom full of old possessions that you haven't touched and used from week to week, month to month, here's a telltale sign. If they're covered in dust, you got to ask yourself, when was the last time I used it and enjoyed it? And someone once told me, by letting an object go, you're freeing it into the universe to be what it's meant to be. Like letting a dusty bike go to someone who wants to ride it, so that it can be a bicycle again, and it can go out and be enjoyed by a child or an adult who wants to ride it. That for me has been very powerful and has helped me let go of a lot of old possessions that no longer serve me. And the story I wanted to share here was, I observed recently a loved one who lived in a house for many, many years. I'm not going to say who they are, and had a lot of possessions of their own from the past, possessions from when certain possessions owned by certain people who are no longer alive anymore, and also just crap accumulated over the years that cost a lot of money once upon a time, but has no longer, say it's been replaced. It's an old television, it's an old stereo, it's an old lamp, it's been replaced by a touch lamp, a smart telly, a Bluetooth speaker. It's old technology, but because it cost a lot of money once upon a time, it's ended up in the loft or a spare bedroom or a wardrobe. And I observed that person. It corresponded actually with quite a big traumatic life event, but as they were recovering from that traumatic life event, they decided to have a huge clear out and declutter the whole house and let go of tons and tons and tons of old possessions and belongings. And I literally saw that person stand a little taller and take like a deep physical sigh of relief as they reclaimed their house again, and rooms that were unusable previously became usable. And they let go of all of these items from the past to make room for the future. And the house they live in is now loved. It feels like when you walk into that house, like the house has taken a breath of fresh air, because it literally has. It's all been aired out and it's been cleaned top to bottom, and it's now largely free of old possessions which were just of no value anymore and were just in the way and annoying and dusty and broken. And you get the picture. It's hugely powerful for them, and I've loved observing that process and seeing how you can almost see how every single object going out the door has led that person to just feeling a little bit happier, a little bit lighter. No one object in itself has led to huge transformation, but the compound effect, the cumulative effect of letting go of all of these items from the past has led to huge transformation, and someone who literally looks like the weight of the world has been lifted from their shoulders. So my action here for you, for number 2, is have a look around your house, have a look in that cupboard you don't go in very often, and see if there's one item, one object that you feel you could let go of. Free it up for someone else to use it if it's usable and working, perhaps giving it to charity. I get a great kick out of giving things to charity. There's no such thing as a selfless kind act. I love donating to charity, and I like seeing things go on to be used, because I really dislike sending things to landfill. But at the end of the day, equally, if it's broken, if it's of no value to anyone, and if it's no longer working, it might end up having to go in the wheelie bin or the recycling bin, hopefully. And see how you feel as a result. That little extra space in that wardrobe, that cupboard, that drawer that you didn't have before, just see how it feels, and observe perhaps a week or 2 later if something new has come into your life, whether it's something tiny, whether you've found something you were looking for, or whether someone's bought you a gift, a really nice gift. It might not necessarily be directly linked, and I know this way of thinking isn't for everyone, but sometimes by letting go of one physical object that no longer serves you, you might find that another one that does just happens to find its way into your life for the first time, or back into your life if you thought you'd lost it and it had gone. You can imagine how many things my relative who cleared out their house found, useful things that they'd been looking for a very long time, when they cleared out their house of all those old possessions. That was a joyous part of the process as well. So number 2 was letting go of old physical belongings to make room for new ones, with the action of letting go of one item today and seeing how you feel and what happens over the next week or 2. Number 3 is another one that's close to my heart. The principle of letting go of old projects and aspirations to make room for new, more exciting ones. So I want to start by describing something called the sunken cost fallacy. I've mentioned it before in some of my episodes. It's that principle of, I've put so much money into this thing that I might as well put some more in to see it through. And sometimes that can lead to years and years and years of putting money, time, effort, resources, energy, whatever resource it is, into trying to achieve and complete something, even though all the joy and the love and the passion has gone out of it long ago, and it's just become a means to an end. But that need for it to be concluded, that need to see it finished, and to justify all the blood, sweat and tears, can lead to a lot of continued pain weeks and weeks or years and years down the line. It could be that old project or that aspiration, that need to do, be or finish something, might not even be your own. It might have come from a parent or a friend, or it might have come from a time when you were in a different point in your life and you've evolved since then. Seeing as we are ever changing, ever evolving species, what we wanted 5 or 10 years ago isn't necessarily what we want right now. So I'm not advocating giving up. On the contrary, I'm advocating looking at your projects and your aspirations and your goals and thinking and auditing them and saying, is this serving me still? Is it still exciting and appealing? Do I still really want this thing? And is it still enjoyable? Is it a joyous process? Or is it just a pain, a sort of a ball and chain that I'm dragging round? Is there no joy in it anymore? Is it just a joyless venture? You know, like a black and white film that the colour's been zapped out of, and then the sound's gone, and then the picture's all fuzzy, and it's gone. It's no longer the film you wanted to sit and watch, for example. Speaking of examples, my example here for this one is that I had an old car. It was a Toyota MR2. Shortly after the pandemic, I bought it for a very low price, thinking that I could sell it very quickly and hopefully make a few £100 towards my solo travel trip. It was a very old, very low value, slightly battered car, and I made a huge mistake buying it. It was terrible. The engine failed almost immediately after I bought it. I ended up calling the breakdown. I ended up with a big hotel bill where we'd had to stay because I broke down, couldn't get home. And then the suffering continued. I finally got it home, took it to a local mechanic. They said it's completely shot. The engine's gone. So went on Facebook. I found a Facebook group, owners club, and posted my predicament. I found someone in there that offered to fit me a new engine for a very low price, but it would take ages and ages and ages. I reluctantly agreed to it, thinking sunken cost fallacy. I've put so much money into it already, by buying it, I want to see something back. I will put pretty much what I'd paid to buy it, I'll put in again to get the engine repaired with another engine from another car, a transplant engine, and I'll have it fixed, and then I'll sell it, and I'll make some or all of my money back. Yeah, right. The problem here is it took ages. It took virtually an entire year. During that year it was insured, it was taxed, loads of other parts needed replacing, loads of other problems were found as this gentleman was completing the work for me. It was a total and utter nightmare, and I lost loads of money on it, and I ended up selling it for a reasonably fair price, but what I got back for it was way less than what I'd put into it in total. The financial part of it hurt, but the mental part of it, the emotional drain, that car did my head in. It was a thorn in my neck while I was away travelling, and it did sour several days while of my travel. As I was thinking about the car, I was getting bills for it while I wasn't earning much of an income, and it was just, honestly, it was a thorn in my side. And letting go of that car when it did finally get sold, it was such a relief to see it gone. But I'm telling you now that the relief I got by getting a reasonably fair price for it wasn't half as good as I thought it would be, and probably I would have been better off letting go of it immediately and accepting the loss when I found out that the engine had failed, and just going, this is one of those times in life where you've made a mistake. Life's taught me a lesson, and the best thing I can do here is just let it go, and the suffering can come to an end, and I can't justify the financial loss, but I can come to terms with and accept the financial loss in the knowledge that the financial loss has ended. There will be no more financial loss because there's no more car. The car has gone. But by keeping it for a year, it got worse and worse and worse. It added insult after insult after insult to injury, and it was lots of salt in the wound. You get the picture. I should have, and in hindsight, if I had that experience again, I'd let go of the car sooner. As the suffering, the ends didn't justify the means. So, number 3, letting go of old projects and aspirations to make room for new, more exciting ones. the action there was to audit your life and ask, how is this project, this aspiration or this goal serving me? Is it still serving me? Is it still appealing? And ultimately, where does it come from? Is it my own goal, or is it one that maybe came from someone else? And is it time to let this go and make room for something new that's more appealing and more exciting, more energizing? So keeping us moving, number 4 of my list of 5 areas of your life that letting go of the old to make room for the new can be applied is letting go of expired identities to make room for more upgraded ones. So what do I mean by an identity? So I was once an IT technician at a company in Harrogate. I was once a member of boot camp, outdoor fitness, training, sports group. I was once a fan of football and watching the Tour de France with my dad. And I was once a loyal buyer of Audis and Apple iPhones. Only had one Audi, but I always liked the brand. The point was, it's those identities, those groups we were a member of, the things that we introduce ourselves as. Hi, I'm David. I work in IT for XYZ company. Hi, I'm David. I'm a football fan, and I'm here to support my team, Everton, for example. Or I am David. I'm a big Apple and Audi fan. Love everything Audi and Apple. In reality, those identities, I had them for a period of time, but they've kind of gone now. They've drifted away. And in letting go of them, I made room for new, more appealing, more energizing identities that reflect me now, not me back then. And one thing that I did, for example, was I held on to one identity for way too long, fearing the loss and putting off leaving that group. It was a fitness group. I was part of their social media group, and I used to see their posts, and I used to go down once a year, show my face and pretend that I was an active member. And really, I should have left that group earlier, because I was no longer keen to be a member. And by that membership dragging on and on and on, not only was I still paying for it, I wasn't going. It's like a gym membership. You're no longer paying for it. You're no longer going. You feel like you're still a gym person and a gym goer, but you don't go, and then you feel guilty for not going. You feel sort of guilty for paying, and then you sort of, I don't know, it's difficult. You just feel awkward and constricted inside. And the problem is, by having several of those old identities that you're carrying around, those old definitions of yourself that no longer apply, those old groups that you're perhaps ready to leave but you're still remaining a member of, those old memberships and subscriptions, you get the picture. It can prevent you joining and becoming a member of a new organisation, a new company, a new career, a new sports group, a new hobby. Because if you feel so overloaded with all of these old identities, you've got so many of them and some of them don't even serve you anymore, then you might not feel open to when the right new opportunity, the right new organisation comes along with a new job in a new sector, in a new place. But if you're clinging desperately on to the past and all those old definitions and identities, that opportunity might pass you by. So for me, leaving boot camp and no longer cancelling my membership and leaving the social media groups and deciding I'm no longer part of this community freed me up mentally to, a couple of months later, join my cycling club and become an active member and participate. And in the first year, I was out there all the time, riding with the club and loving being a member of the cycling club. I'd always wanted to be a member of the cycling club, and it was fantastic. And that only happened because I freed up the space in my life, my mental headspace and my physical schedule. I freed it up to be able to join the group that I really wanted to join and to adopt that new identity as David the cycling club member versus David the boot camp member. It's no reflection of whether one is better than the other, and I'm not advocating that you leave your gym to join a cycling club. That's just my own personal experience of letting go of one identity in place of another. It could have been the opposite way round. I think you get the picture. So for number 4, letting go of expired identities to make room for upgraded ones, my action for you would be to reflect on your life and think, what's one identity that you're carrying around that may or may no longer be serving you? And what could be another better one to really own and embody instead? And it might be a case of just letting go of one identity, leaving a group, leaving a subscription behind, leaving a WhatsApp group that you feel you're no longer a contributor to, and you're no longer a part of that community or group, leaving it respectfully and politely and kindly, and then freeing up space and seeing what comes up. And maybe that hobby you've enjoyed might suddenly, a local group that you weren't aware of might suddenly appear on your spectrum, might appear on your radar, I should say, so that it comes into your awareness. And it might have been there all along, but there was no room in your awareness for it because the old identity was taking up all of that space. And last but not least, number 5, this is perhaps the most sensitive one to deal with, to share with you today. Number 5 is letting go of relationships that no longer serve us to create space in your life for new ones. So I'm not advocating here going out and defriending people and ghosting them and cutting family members off. Not at all. It's a case of reflecting on the people that you spend your time with and the groups that you're a member of, the friendship groups, and considering and asking you the question of how much does this community, how much does this group serve me and add to my life, and how great do I feel after being with these people, or how much does it no longer serve me? It once did, and now I come away feeling in two minds and a little bit torn about what to do. And perhaps where I used to feel very energised around these people, perhaps I now feel de-energised and drained, because perhaps your identity has changed and been upgraded, and you're no longer heading towards the same destination as those people. So I found myself in rooms full of people where I felt quite lonely, as I felt that everyone in there had similar values and wanted a particular thing and was aiming towards a particular thing, but I was no longer wanting to be on that journey, and that I didn't really value that thing anymore, and I felt a bit lost and like I didn't belong there anymore. And that was where I made the decision to leave that group and to no longer be a part of that organisation, respectfully, politely and honestly. It was a process of saying there's no sinister reason I'm leaving here, but I feel like for me it's time to move on, and I'm still here and available, but I am no longer going to be here every week or indeed every day, and dialing it down. Whether or not you decide to tell people, it's your decision, it's your approach, whatever you feels best and right. I'm a great believer in follow your gut. Your gut instinct won't lead you far wrong. If you feel it's right, it probably is. If you feel it's wrong, it also probably is. But for me, creating a little bit of distance from certain groups, not cutting them off, but creating a little bit of distance, perhaps not being quite as available for every one of their meetups, maybe meeting with them once a year versus once a month, has enabled me to then create more space in my life to join new communities like the business networking community in Leeds, and the Toastmasters community in Leeds City Centre, and my cycling club community based in Yeadon. By distancing myself a little bit, by pulling away and withdrawing from certain communities that were no longer filling my cup, I found other communities that really fill my cup to overflowing and serve me, and I find people that I have an aligned interests with, and we're heading in this roughly vaguely in the same direction. We might be on a different route, a different path, but we're aiming for a similar thing. So we're able to help each other, bounce ideas off each other, and our energy levels resonate. and our ideas and our thoughts and our vision for our lives and our values largely align. But I will caveat that with, it can be very valuable to spend time with people who your vision for your life and your belief systems, perhaps political, religious beliefs, for example, financial beliefs, don't align, misalign. Because great minds think alike, but unlike people getting together in rooms, the greatest teams in the world are made up of people who think and act and behave differently. Because one person's strength is another person's weakness, and vice versa. So it can be fantastically valuable and very mind-bogglingly, mind-opening to, and I should say mind-broadening, to go and spend time with groups of people who follow a completely different life to you. I loved doing that as part of solo travel. I loved sitting with a group of devoted Muslims in Malaysia and learning all about their religion and the way they live and the beliefs they hold, and their life was so different to mine. There's huge chasms in belief systems and how they live and what they're aiming for in life and what they believe. But it was wonderful, and it opened my mind to what it's like to live a day in their shoes and how their opinions and belief systems differ from mine. So I would equally advocate spending time with people who do think differently to you. And the key thing is, after spending time with them, you feel energized, you feel like your cup's full and you've enjoyed it, and it's adding to your life in some way. And the groups that you used to be a member of, I've found that it's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with them, and they've not become mean and cruel, nasty people overnight. Not at all. On the contrary, they're still lovely, wonderful people, but it's just that I've changed, and what I want from my life and the direction I'm heading in has changed since I originally knew those people. And it perhaps is just time. Jay Shetty talks about people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And in some cases, it can just be that season has come to a natural end. A bit like the sport does at the end of summer and autumn. As we go into winter, a lot of the outdoor sports, the seasons end. And then a new season starts the following year. So my action for you here on this fifth and final point is to reflect on the people and relationship groups that you're in and how they're serving, or indeed no longer serving you, and consider gently and respectfully distancing yourself from one group and seeking out, or at least creating space for, a new group, a new community, a new person in your life. And my very final note as we draw this episode to a close is a note on grief. I always thought for many years that grief was a process that only applies to when you've lost a person in your life or an animal that you consider a member of your family. It turns out that grief can actually be applied to a lot more than just the loss. I shouldn't say just, than the tremendous loss of a person. Grief can be applied to the loss of an identity, to the loss of a possession. In fact, everything I've discussed today, grieving that loss is a process that might need to take place. I know, for example, when I left my beloved job in Harrogate to go solo travelling, my partner observed that it was like watching someone go through a breakup. As I went through the 5 stages of grief and was genuinely broken-hearted, really upset about leaving that position and that group, that community behind, my beloved team, my old role, my old identity. There was so much I loved about that job and so much that I held dear and in my heart that it really, really hurt deep down to leave that job. It was far more than just a job and a pay packet, far more. And I had to grieve the loss of that job and come to terms with it before I was then able to move on and be open to new opportunities for work, employment, travel, and all of the rest of life. It was a heartbreaker, And it was only when a coach explained to me that grief can be applied to the loss of a job, an identity, a possession, literally anything in life, anything and everything, that I suddenly had a revelation of, oh my goodness, I now understand why I'm feeling like I'm feeling. Going through these 5 stages of grief, recommend looking it up, as grief can apply to all areas of life. So I definitely recommend doing some research into grief. I'm not going to go into it now, as I don't feel qualified and able to, and there's other people who will do it far better than I will. But for me, that was a real powerful realization and insight, realizing that leaving a job behind, leaving a team and a manager and friends behind to go from one job to another can be a real deep and difficult process, but also super valuable and necessary to be able to fully, truly move on with your life and not feel stuck in the past in some way, shape or form. So that's all from me today. Thank you very much for your listen. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments and feedback, and I look forward to seeing you in a future episode and to hopefully meeting with some more of you for a coffee and a discovery call. I'd be delighted to find out how I could help support you on your journey with whatever challenge it is that you're facing. 2 heads are always better than 1. Thank you very much for your listen. I'll see you next week.
The Solo Coach Podcast.